Hello, we are the Salon Sleuths. My name is Melissa,
And my name is Leslie.
and we are two women from the Pacific Northwest. We are both curious about paranormals, spirit guides, ghosts, past lives.
We are suspicious about true crime, disappearances, and strange phenomenons. We are open to learning about the supernatural and all things we don't understand.
Together, we're opinionated with a splash of smartass. Join us to learn. And stay curious, stay suspicious, and stay open.
Follow Salon Sleuths on all major podcast platforms.
Well, hello, Leslie and Salon Sleuth fans. How are you today?
I'm doing okay.
Oh, okay. Well, tell me
I
about
told
okay.
you about what happened.
Well, I'm not going to tell people if you don't want to talk about it. That's your own
Let's just
business.
say I had an issue with my son and I had to go drive 3.5 hours to pick him up and
Is it
then turn right back around and come back home. But I had to leave at 4:30 this morning, so I was quite tired.
isn't parenting grand?
Well, we don't do that kind of stuff in our family, is what I was trying to, we help people. We don't create issues for others. And so I was not pleased one bit.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Anyway,
And he was at camp, right?
uh-huh. Had
He'd
to
been
come home
so looking
early.
Yeah, he'd been so looking forward to this.
It was like a big deal. Like we hadn't done anything because of COVID. And then we finally said, okay, let's do this. And it wasn't cheap.
Right?
And then we bought a bunch of other things. And then,
He's home.
well,
Well,
here, Melissa, the thing is, everybody's home now. He just wasn't allowed to be on the bus.
oh, he didn't even have to leave early then, really.
No, he left early. The bus was leaving a couple hours later, but
Yeah,
they
but
didn't even want him on the bus.
that
So,
wasn't even like a day early or anything.
that was the same day. Yeah.
Uh, I didn't realize that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, whatever.
Well, there you go. And so your husband was playing the tough card, right? Like I'm not getting up or I'm not leaving at 4 a.m. to go pick him up kind of thing, right?
Yeah, and that's not really an option. Like he
Right.
needed to be picked up. So I'm like, okay. Like gathering my shoes all quietly like a little mouse and like maybe he just thinks I'm going to work. I don't know. I'm going. I
Oh
mean, I
my
would do that for
gosh.
anybody that,
Yeah.
so
Well, you know what? They don't say it's easy to be a parent, and sometimes it downright stinks. So,
well, I always learn the hard ways too. So maybe
yeah.
this would be
You know,
my
I
issue is if it continues, then I will have,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah. You know, somebody gave me the advice once and I've taken it to heart that you actually want your kids to screw up now when the repercussions and the effects are not as great. So you
Right.
want them to struggle in school and figure out how they need to study and how they need to be on time and all that stuff because when it matters and they get a job, the price of poker goes up, right?
Right. That's true.
So
Or
you
your
actually
records are permanent, so you don't want to,
exactly.
yes. Yeah.
Right. Instead
And we
of
talked
getting in
about that
trouble.
in the car.
Yeah,
I said,
instead of
you have two roads. Like you're either going to go continue this path and then have like a record and like things are going to be hard, or
right,
right now you can study, do well in school, not be the class clown,
right, right.
and do well, go to college, get a good job, and buy all the things that you want to buy and send your kids to camp and pick them up in the middle of the night,
Yep. Yep.
things like that.
Yep. Because they're learning and struggling and trying to fit in. And he's in that really vulnerable state of wanting to be a cool kid and am I a cool kid and all of those good things. So it's just part of the journey, but at least he's doing it now.
Yeah.
And hopefully he'll get it out of his system real soon so that you don't have to be awoken at
And
four
nobody was
o'clock in the morning.
hurt. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, when they called, I really thought he had been injured.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, I almost kind of wished he was injured versus being in trouble, but then I'm glad he's not. So it was just a
Right.
lesson. And we're like, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how to deal with these things. I've never done this, like,
Yeah. The only thing
so
you know and what he knows is he's been around the club long enough to know those kids that come to summer camp and all that and, mess around and aren't very nice kids or, whatever. And, from that standpoint, maybe next year he's going to start volunteering at the kids camps.
We'll see. Something's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. So
He's
he
going to
can
start working
see.
with me on the volunteering
Yeah.
stuff. So,
Well, I'm so
anyway,
sorry. You're probably exhausted today.
I had a little nap. I'm good now.
Oh, good, good. Well, I have some news,
Okay.
not nearly like yours, but on Monday we recorded with Suzanne Jacques. I also recorded with Jared Lysick from Adventures with Purpose because I was so excited about having Jared on again. For those of our loyal listeners, we had him on at the very beginning of the pandemic. And for those of you that kind of don't know his company, he started Adventures with Purpose, and he started it like 3 years ago with his daughter and his wife. And he was just going around diving because he liked to dive. He's going around diving, cleaning up waters and streams and lakes and all that, and finding cell phones, guns, old pieces of metal, and then he started finding cars. And so then he kind of had to get some help and started pulling cars out. Well, they had one car that had someone in it. And I don't know that was the very first car they found. That was not I should say that was not the very first car that they found, but he started basically then on this mission. And I kind of knew, I don't know about you, Leslie, but I kind of knew last year when we talked to him, or when I talked to him, that this was going to be a calling, like going out and finding missing persons in bodies of water was going to be a calling, because as you and I know, law enforcement is so overtaxed. They have so many things on their plate. Looking in the waters is not what they have time to do, right?
Right.
So anyways, he and I chatted. If you are at all interested, I recommend that you go to his YouTube channel. It's Adventures with Purpose.
It's really good. I mean, it is like, even my husband found it for totally different reasons. My son had been watching it. And then I was like, oh, you know that guy? We know that guy. Like,
yeah. Well, I told him that. So they have 1.23 million subscribers to that channel. And I told him the story of your husband and how I'd been telling my son and my husband to watch this. Oh my God, these guys are so cool. And then your husband comes home and he's like, oh my God, I found these really cool guys and they go out in the water. And he's like, and you're like, yeah, we know him. He's been on our podcast.
Well, did you tell him we have a boat if he ever needs to?
No, I did not tell him that.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe you can message him, because I mean, you could be on the boat.
Yeah. So it's really interesting though, on their website, first of all, they don't take a single dime from any of these families. I just want to be clear and have him be clear. And what happened was I interviewed him on Monday, was super excited, kind of going back to this. And I started the recording and it said, you have too much saved. You need to delete some stuff to have room. So, and we maybe had 12 minutes on the recording, very little. And then I said, hey, Jared, we got to take a tea. I got to remove some stuff, go back on. Well, apparently when I deleted it, it just archived it. It didn't actually remove it.
Yeah. And I tried to go figure out how to delete it. I don't even,
So anyway, so we got back on. It didn't tell us again that, hey, you've run out of recording. I didn't even notice. So we recorded for almost an hour, a whole interview about all these cases, and we got very little of it recorded. So I was super bummed, but I did want to do a shout out for him and kind of tell you what we talked about. But they do not take a dime from any of these families. And in order for them to, put in all the time and effort they do, it's just from donations. So if you're at all interested, go on. I think they get half of a cent or half of a cent for each listen. They get 0.005 cents for every person that listens on YouTube. And then they also are selling some swag now, Leslie, which we might have to get some. Yeah. Really, really cute. And they are also saving up for some bigger items. But I had talked to him. The reason this came up is because you said your boat. On their website, it said that they were saving up for this boat. And so I mentioned that to him. And he goes, well, actually, we're kind of maybe backing off of that, because we find that our little rubber blow up raft is really, really quick and nimble. And because it's so small, the radar and all the equipment can be so close. And
Yeah,
so they're getting really good at being able to get a really good read on the waters below them that the bigger boats can't get.
that's awesome.
So he's kind of excited about that. And I said, so why can you find these things and, law enforcement can't? He said, well, we know our equipment really, really well. I mean, we're doing this now full time for a couple
Well,
years.
and that's what he does, right? So,
Yeah.
like,
This is
the
what he
police,
does.
like we talked about in the past, are still stretched with
Yes.
everything that they have to do. So, I'm imagining that there's not one person just dedicated to this. So,
Yes. And now I cannot remember which case it was, but at one point, he's talking to law enforcement, the sheriff, and, he says, hey, I want to respect you guys, do you guys want to pull this out of the water or not? And the sheriff said, hey, can you come over here and we'll have a private conversation off air? And I was like, Jared, what did he say?
yeah,
And he just said that he told me that the sheriff had basically said, look, I don't know that I have the manpower and the skills to pull this up without it falling apart and wrecking it, or it dumping out when we bring it up. So you guys have the equipment, you know how to do this, do this full time, can you guys just pull it out? So they did. And to date, Leslie, they have pulled out, I think it's 10 people, 3, 6, 9, 10. Yes, 10 people, 10 missing peoples. 10, they have found 10 missing people.
that
Poor
is
peoples.
crazy.
Yeah. And on their website, I'm just going to read off some of the names. Michael Mead, Nathan Ashby, Timothy Robinson, Nicholas Allen, Ethan Kazmerzak, Bill Simmons, Carrie Mae Parker, which she's who we talked about last time, and I'm going to talk about her a little bit more. Antonio Amero Lopez, he was the gentleman who his car, excuse me, went over the Glen Jackson Bridge in
Ugh.
Washington in February. Remember, we were talking about that? We had an ice storm and how low that bridge is, and his car went off of that. Well, they got in the water and had him out in 3 days.
Ugh.
Yeah, pretty impressive. And then Tammy Goff, which is the one I just recently got sucked into all the episodes on that. And I'll tell you a little bit about that one. And Richard Ritz. The other one that he cannot take credit for, but I think is a little interesting, is Natalie Jones. And it just so happened that Natalie was a young girl that was missing. She'd been missing about 6 months, I think. And she drove a hot pink car. This was in Georgia. And they were in Georgia searching for her. And they'd been there about 2 days when someone close to them got heard over the police scanner that a local neighbor had found a hot pink car. So,
Ugh.
of course, they kind of went over and as close they could get as law enforcement would let them get. And it turned out that the homeowner of a piece of property had been ill and had not been able to kind of mow down his property, had finally hired somebody, totally, like, ironically, the time that they're there. And they ended up, the guy who was mowing it down ended up finding the car inside all of the brush. So they were actually there at the same time, but had nothing to do with that. So
Yeah.
the one that I started to tell you, or I did tell you actually a little bit about Carrie Mae Parker the last time we talked. Do you remember this one? That she was the mother, I think she's mother of 3, but she had a young boy and she was throwing a party for him, and then she never showed up. Do you
Oh,
remember
yeah.
that?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I asked him about that. I said, hey, so I got full body chills when I heard about the happy birthday balloons that had just blown onto the guardrail near where you guys had found her. And he said, oh yeah. He goes, we knew instantly that was where we were going to find her. And so we talked a little bit. I said, hey, so that all came about by, the sister meeting somebody on Facebook to sell something in a parking lot. And this person was like, hey, your sister's in a bunch of water, like communicating with her. And he said, yeah, that was really, really weird. And I said, so how well have you done with, psychics and that kind of thing? He goes, honestly, we have not done well. Nobody has been able to help us locate someone. That's probably the closest that they've come. But he's actually offered that if a psychic wants to work with him on a case, what his offer is provide upfront $5,000 for all of the trip, for the equipment to get out there, because they take their truck, they take their
everything.
RV so they can sleep in it, they take their boats, they take all of their sonar and everything with them. It costs quite a bit of money to get out there. And so he said, hey, if they're willing to put up money, I will go search, and if it is where they say it is, I will reimburse the 5,000 and they will be my person for life. So he's kind of putting a call out there, but I did say, oh my God, I got full body chills.
Yeah.
How did you feel? And he's like, oh yeah, it was kind of a big moment when we found those balloons. We knew that we were onto something. So that was the one I told you about last time. And then the other one that I just got totally sucked into is the story of Tammy Goff. Now, Tammy Goff was in Great Falls area of Montana. And do you have allergies? I hear you sniffing, you poor thing.
I think I have a cold.
Oh no. How can you get a cold when you're constantly wearing your mask?
Everybody in our house has this little, like my one eye is getting all watery.
Oh, I'm so sorry. You can put me on mute or put yourself on mute.
Okay. I can do that.
Tammy Goff, she'd been missing for 3 years, and she had married her high school sweetheart right out of high school, and they lived and grew up in Washington, and now they were living in Montana. And she was in her 60s, and so was her husband. And about 3 years ago, she got up at about 7 o'clock in the morning. She hopped into her car with her best friend, Sadie, the dog. And her husband says he looked out the window and saw her driving off and didn't really think a thing of it, just thought she was going out to do some errands or whatever. And then later that day, she never came home, and he thought that was kind of weird. So he starts going to look for her and calling people, trying to find her. And people started talking about having seen her dog that she had rescued several years earlier, Sadie, who was not a water dog, by the way, and had seen Sadie next to the riverbank. And Sadie was completely wet, and Sadie was pacing back and forth on the bank of the water. And then Sadie was then also seen the next morning. And meanwhile, her husband is still looking for him, or still looking for her, has no idea where she's at. The next morning, Sadie is seen again wet at the same area, but a little bit later that day, Sadie has now crossed the river to some dogs that he, or she, I guess it's Sadie, probably a girl, knew on the other side of the riverbank. And the owner of those dogs found Sadie, and Sadie was completely wet. So they think that Sadie had been in the water looking for her, or trying to get her, trying to save her. But nonetheless, Sadie was extremely frantic. So law enforcement had tried and looked. Adventures with Purpose had talked to the husband about a year ago, and he finally reached out to them again. I guess for some reason it wasn't going to really work out, or there was something, I don't know exactly what it was, but they weren't going to go out there. And the husband called and said, hey, I've gotten this equipment that you guys have. How do I work it? How do I run it? And Jared said, well, maybe we need to come out. So they ended up coming out. And after a couple days of searching all the places that the husband really, really felt like she wanted to search. And by the way, he'd been spending every day since she'd been missing looking for her. Like, he was out all the time looking for her, and law enforcement had been unable to find anything in regards to her or her truck. And finally, I think it was the third day, Jared and the team said, I think we need to go back to where the dog was. I think we're getting distracted by all these other possibilities. I think we need to go back to where the dog was. And Jared had kind of ruled this location out, he said, because of the way you access the water at this point, because it was on private land and it just wasn't a normal way you would, run off into the lake or whatever, or the river. But they put in there and they didn't have to search very long and they found her truck. And so after 3 years, this family had closure. And sadly, Sadie had died about a year earlier. But even in death, Sadie was able to help find Tammy. And I also go, oh my gosh, dogs are so amazing. So this is another thing that we can get your fine puppy to do in its adult years. How is your puppy, by the way?
He's good. He's big, and I need to really train him better. But I would love to get him to be tracking.
Yeah. Do you think he'd jump in the water after you?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I think he'd jump in the water for anybody. He loves water.
Does he? Well, this was apparently Sadie was not even a water dog.
Oh,
so, yeah. This was not a dog who would typically get in the water. I never really found out. Like in my mind, it was a German Shepherd, but I don't think it was a German Shepherd. Isn't that funny how you make up in your mind what things are?
Right.
So we talked about that case a little bit, and he just really stressed the fact that this was not ever anything that he had expected for his life and for his career, but he does feel very humbled and very honored to be doing it. And without donations and without everybody supporting them, they wouldn't be able to do this. There are now 6 full-time people that work Adventures with Purpose. And you can imagine all the hours of research and planning that needs to go into this. But they every fall now are doing a 45-day road trip around the nation to different places that they've deemed possibilities to find and help families with missing persons.
Amazing. So I just went to our Facebook page and I put on their donation page.
Oh, good.
A link to it. And then I'm also posting it on the Washington and Oregon missing persons, along with Salon Sleuth's private groups. So if anybody would like to make a donation, because they are only donation based, what do they do? Volunteers. You can make a donation on our Facebook page.
Yes. And, Leslie, I think we're missing out on this half of a cent, because just to tell our listeners, we make $4 every, 3 months, maybe?
I think we've made total now $18.
Yeah. So it's not like it's big money, you guys.
That's one hand.
Yeah. I was going to say, that hasn't even covered one of our microphones.
It's just fun, though. It gave us something to do, especially pre-COVID. And look at all the amazing people we meet.
I know. We do meet amazing people.
Yeah.
We would love to hear from more of you listeners, though, on what things you want to hear about and maybe ideas on people we could reach out to and talk to. Because, sometimes we get stuck in our own little bubbles and go down these rabbit holes and we don't know if it's even interesting,
Yes.
Yeah. So that is my spiel on Adventures with Purpose. And I just have to say that Jared's just a nice guy and he's a local guy. And I feel really proud of him and what his company is doing, that they are helping so many people bring closure. And can you imagine? I mean, I can't imagine being one of those families, but I can also just say that wouldn't you want somebody on your side like that? That would help you?
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. I agree.
Yes.
All right. I want to tell you a story.
Oh, okay.
Melissa, what if I just gave you $200,000? Would that be cool?
Yeah, that'd be great.
What if you had to turn in somebody that you knew for $200,000?
Oh, is it my son or my daughter or my
Well,
family?
that was going to be my next question. What
It
if it
depends.
was what if it was a neighbor that you really, really like?
Oh, gosh. I think I would. I think I would.
Okay. What if he was a husband of somebody or somebody's boyfriend of somebody that you knew?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So there's a guy out there. His name is Jason Derrick Brown. It was born on July 1st, 1969. So he just had a birthday. And this guy is sort of like, he's the life of the party. He
Okay.
has to have the best things. He's a center of attention all the time, and he's a surfer dude. He surfs. He's got a boat. He's got jet skis. He's got motorcycles, Escalade. He's got BMW M3, and he's got to have the nicest things and all the time, right?
Yes.
So let me see. Sorry, I need to figure out the date this all happened. Would be November 29th, 2004. So this was right after Thanksgiving weekend. And he had been scoping out the AMC theater in Phoenix, Arizona. I believe it was Phoenix. Could be one of the outskirts cities, but I believe it was I don't know. Anyway, it was in Arizona. And oh, it doesn't say which one he was at. So he doesn't just approach, he follows up this guy, Robert Keith Palmeiras. He was an armored guard. He had just gone in to collect the deposits from the AMC theater. Now he thought that Jason Derrick Brown thought because it is a theater in like a busy outdoor mall that he's going to pull in a ton of money. So he approaches this, runs up, doesn't even say a word and shoots him 6 times, 5 of which hit him above the neck. And it happened so quickly that he didn't even have time to get his gun all the way out. His gun was unclipped and found underneath him, but he didn't even have his hand on it. And he took the bag, and as he was running off, he trips, drops the gun, drops the bag, picks him back up, gets on a mountain bike, and takes off. Now, there was nobody there because it's 10 o'clock in the morning. There were a few landscapers. There was a painter who saw the whole thing. The painter reaches out and says to him, "Hey." And then he turns around and stops, looks at him. And then the painter's like, "Oh, crap. Like, I'm not
He could
sure
shoot
what I
me.
just," right. And so then he gets back on the bike or just starts going again. And so, of course, everyone's like freaking out. So they end up having a helicopter, and the helicopter finds the bike, which is not too far away. It's in a brush right next to a parking lot. So he basically dumps the bike, gets in a car, takes off. They have no idea who this guy is. They said he is either white or Hispanic. He's got a hoodie on, and that's it. That's all they know. Well, luckily, that bike had fingerprints on it. And this is like his big mistake. He could have gotten away with this had he not had those fingerprints on the bike. So, but it takes him a couple days because this is in 2004, right? So
Yes.
by this time, he gets in his car and they're able to track like the cell phone and stuff, but it's delayed because the technology isn't there yet. So they see that um, he had gone to like a 24-hour fitness. He had gone in, he had put some stuff in a locker. He had left for about 30 minutes, comes back in, gets the bag back out. They don't know if he had showered, dumped stuff. They don't really know. He goes to the airport, that he never gets out of the car. So he's making phone calls during this whole time too. He makes about 40 phone calls. He's calling his brother, he's calling different people. I think he made like I can't remember. They said lot of phone calls in this short amount of time. And then he's just gone. They don't know where he's at, right? So
But he didn't get on a plane.
he did not get on a plane. So what he ended up doing is he was in the BMW. So leading up to this, he had gone to a hotel. He had been staying at this hotel. And now going back to talking to the people at the hotel, they remember a guy shoving a mountain bike into a two-door, like what do they call it? Like a sports car, which was his BMW. So he's shoving. They know it's him because he's putting his bike into the back of this convertible BMW. The day of the whole incident, he actually calls the hotel and he tells them, listen, I'm not able to come back. I need to extend my stay a couple of days. And he pays for the room and he stays. He doesn't stay, but he goes. So at some point during the night, he goes back to the room, cleans everything out because he probably wasn't prepared, took everything out. Now, this guy also had PO boxes. So once they get the fingerprints, they're able to track what kind of cars he has. He has different storage like facilities, he rental storage places. He's got PO boxes. Now they're trying to figure out who his family is and where they are, where everybody is located, and they're like putting like everything out so that people can um, like so that different agencies can watch these things. In the meantime, so Phoenix Department and the FBI are sort of working together. Now, the Phoenix Department wants to put it out like this is the guy we're looking for. The FBI is like, hey, wait a few minutes, wait 2 days, give me 48 hours, because if I can do that, we can have him in custody. But if you put it out, he's going to know that we know, because at this point, he doesn't even know that we know who he is,
Right.
because he thinks he's planned this whole thing out. So what he had done is he had gone to one of his storage places where he had kept his Escalade, and I believe that was in Salt Lake City. He goes and exchanges the car. In the meantime, he also makes a deposit. Okay, let me think how this works. Yeah, so he makes a deposit of $2,000. Now, I don't know why he would have deposited some money, but he did, because he doesn't think he's being caught, right? So he deposits some money. He exchanges cars. He calls his sister and is like, hey, I'm going to come see you. And she's at this time living in Santa Margarita, California. Is that
Yes.
how you say it? So he goes to her house, and her son is now going over. So he picks up her son from school that day. Then he's going to his father's. Meanwhile, her and her brother, they're partying up all week. She's like, he was hiding in plain sight. We were seeing old friends. We were hanging out. We were going to bars. She was reflecting back. There were three things that had happened that she was now looking back thought they were weird. But at the time, she was just like, oh, that's kind of
Quirky.
odd. Right.
Yeah.
So one thing was, he was listening to rap music that had to do with like guns and shooting and all of that. So she thought, God, he'd never listened to music like that before. That's kind of weird. Another thing was he always wanted her to have her front door locked. And she's like, okay, whatever, like, okay. And then the last thing was they were out one night partying and she was driving fast. That's one thing that they do. They loved like nice, fast cars. And they both always drove like a bat out of hell. Well, apparently he was yelling at her to slow down. Like, and she's like, like, what's going on? Like, this is not us. Like, and so she thought that was weird, but only hindsight, not at the
Right.
time. Well, she was like, that's kind of why is my brother yelling at me? Because we always drive fast. But if she
Well,
gets
you
pulled over,
wouldn't think he killed someone.
right? So she's like, and so,
Oh, we
but
shouldn't
she's
speed because you killed someone and we'll get in trouble. Yeah.
right. She's just partying with her brother, and she goes,
Yeah.
he was never looking over his shoulder, never doing anything, weird like that. And the other thing I want to go back to, the reason why they have his fingerprints was years earlier, him and his brother had gone to like a golf shop. The brother was distracting the employee while he took out some really expensive golf clubs and
Ah.
stole them.
I
So
was
when
going
that
to ask you,
employee
how did they have his
So that's how they had
fingerprint?
that. And so what they ended up doing was that employee calls the sheriff. That sheriff was like, oh, okay. So while he's sending somebody out to that location, he's also calling the other local golf shop. And they're like, they're here right now. And they're like, okay. So then they get pulled over. And so this is where it gets kind of crazy is they give them real ID, somebody else's name, but it's their pictures. And so because they're able to track it down and figure out that's not really them.
Right.
And not only that, he had 2 weeks before this whole thing happened, he had bought a gun at a local gun shop. And I believe it was in Salt Lake City. I could be wrong with that, but in Salt Lake, he's Mormon. So he was raised Mormon. His whole family was. But his dad was also a sociopath narcissist.
Mm.
Like he was a total criminal. And so they were always taught certain things. And the sister will say this over and over again. We were taught to be aware of our surroundings and to watch for certain things. And this goes into play later, I think. But so he goes to this thing, he gets this gun, he takes a lesson. And the guy was like, this guy is just, first of all, like out of control. And he's like super hyper. And he says, um, just out of control. Like he just, it was terrible.
What kind
But
of lesson did he take?
he took a gun lesson.
Oh, a
So
gun
he
lesson. Okay.
bought, yeah. So he went in when he bought the gun. I want the most powerful handgun I can buy, and then he also gets the most expensive, most powerful, and most damaging bullets you can sell.
Oh,
So he
geez.
gets this stuff, right? He goes out to the desert to practice. And when he does this, he accidentally shoots a door of a truck of a camp that somebody who's camping.
Oh,
And the guy
gosh.
was irate. He comes over and he's like, dude, you just shot my truck. My
Yeah.
son is freaking out. He's this
Yeah.
little kid. And so he's like, so I'm so sorry, I'll take care of it. So he's not even very good at what he's
Oh,
doing, right?
gosh.
So, so let's jump back. This whole crime has happened. He made his deposit. He exchanges the car. He actually sends that guy $1,200 to replace or to fix his truck and a gift card for his son from Toys R Us.
Oh, my.
So he also wants to appear really good to people. Like
Right.
there was an interview with his neighbors and they're like, we would have never known. He was the nicest guy. He was super friendly. Like he sounds like somebody that everybody enjoys to be around, the life of the party. And
How
they
old
were
was
just
he?
at the time, so this was in 2004. And I'd have to do the math. 2004, but he was born in
Oh,
1969.
69. Okay. So
So I'm not sure.
he was a youngish guy.
Yeah, he was a youngish guy. He's now like 52 now.
Mhm.
Um, so he exchanges the car. He hangs out with his sister, and then he's like, she was, I think, at work or she was somewhere, and he calls her and he's like, "Hey, I just got a call from my alarm company that something's wrong with my sprinklers. I got to get going back home. Can you come and unlock your door for me?" So she meets him at the house, and by this time, her son's back from his father's, and she's like, he wasn't in a hurry. He went and got his bag, just took his time. He went back out to the car, came back in, got something to drink. And then he's like, "Hey, sis, I'll see you later." Gives her a hug and he takes off. And then her friend calls her and she's like, "You need to turn on the news." And she's like, "What?" And so what had happened was the Phoenix department releases his name. The FBI was like, "Wait, wait, wait, wait." They didn't. So now they know who he is. Now he's on the run. I mean, they were just minutes behind him, right? So he is now
Had
on
he
the
seen
run.
this?
What's that?
Had he seen the news
So I
reports?
think I think something had come up and that's why he had to leave her house.
Okay. Okay.
So she is at home and she's like, okay, because I think of her family history and stuff, she's like, I drank some wine. I had to chill out. My son, I closed the bedroom door so he couldn't see what's going on. Her son was 15 at the time. And her phone is ringing off the hook. Everybody in the world is calling her and being like, "This is your brother." And she's like, "We were just together for a full week and no indication that there was something wrong." So she's like, "I'm going to take my dog around the block." I think she said she had a Jack Russell. She walks around the block and she turns the corner and she sees a an undercover car. And she's like, "Huh, that's weird." She turns another corner. There's another one. And she's like, "Oh my God, they're surrounding my house." So she turns back. She's running towards her house. Before she can even hit the door, she's attacked. And she's thinking, "Oh my God, they're going to think my son is Jason. They're going to kill my son." And so they pull the son out of the room. They're both separated. They're interrogated. They clearly don't know that this had happened. She had spent time with him. And then they ask her, "What was he driving?" And she's like, "He was in his BMW." But we already know he had exchanged the car earlier, but she was
Yeah.
throwing them off. Which direction did he go? Of course, she lies through her teeth because she's like, "I need to talk to Jason. I need to know if he actually did this before I turn my brother in." And and then the interview with the FBI is he's like, "We expect that to happen. He's your
Yes.
family member. Like we take that with a grain of salt of what you're actually telling us."
Right.
So the next thing you see is he gets gas with his credit card down south, like he is headed to Mexico, and uses his credit card, which okay, the other thing is with the armored car, he only got $55,000.
Oh.
Yeah. So it appears that he's headed to Mexico. He uses his credit card and so everyone's headed that way. Meanwhile, they are going to his different PO boxes and they're watching him. A package shows up at one of them, I believe, in Salt Lake City, and it's to his brother. But because it's written to his brother or written to himself, sorry, the sister has to go and help, because she has to release it because it's like next of kin or something with the mail or whatever. It's a federal offense. So they have to get her to help open up this package. And he had sent himself like his PlayStation and some clothes
What?
and his brother's gun that he had stolen while he was there exchanging the cars. His brother didn't even know that that gun was missing. It was a different gun. It wasn't even the one that he had bought. So he's returning some things. Meanwhile, there's a package showing up in a different like a PO box with other random things. The FBI was kind of confused. They're like, these are things that he might need.
Yeah.
But the next thing they see is
Like he's coming back for his PlayStation? Or
I
he just
will, or
wanted his
just
brother to have it?
giving it out to it, yeah.
Okay.
And okay, let me also step back. All these things that he had in his name, he didn't own any of it. It was all bank owned, and he's
Okay.
defaulting on everything. So he's
Okay.
like he has wedged himself in, and he's going to look bad within the community because he's going to lose everything. And he had made this. I think he obviously thought he was going to be making a lot more than $55,000, and he also, I would like to mention, he's in the top 10 of the FBI most wanted.
Oh gosh.
Um, so next thing you know, the Escalade is found at the Portland airport.
Portland, Oregon?
And yes,
So
so
he didn't go south. He actually went north.
no, he went north, and that's where they left off. They
Shut
don't know
up.
because the sister said if you what the dad had taught them as kids, if you need to get rid of and disappear, if you drop your car at the long-term parking lot, you have 30 days before they find it.
Oh wow.
So he had taken it there knowing it was going to take them 30 days to find that car. And he has not been seen since.
And what was
Um,
his name?
his name is Jason Derrick Brown.
Okay.
Now he looks like a little surfer guy. He's only 5'10". He let me see what color eyes he has, as it even say. Um, it doesn't even say what color eyes it. So I think you can look at his picture and be like, okay, well, oh God, here's another crazy thing was he looks a lot like Sean Penn, to the point where
Oh.
some of Sean Penn's body
Doubles.
doubles have been arrested and
Oh geez.
questioned. And they're like, no, 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 it's not him. He could easily change like the way he looks.
Yes.
So I think you really have to go more like by personality. So if you have a friend in the last 16 years or whatever years it's been who's been dating somebody or knows somebody or a neighbor who is like, I think he could probably use some of them his history, like his family use even the same names, because it's harder to remember things that you made up, but if they're real, you will remember that. But if these people have never met his family,
Yeah.
you get what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
like, if you know somebody who's outgoing and he's the life of the party, has to have the best of everything. He's 5'10". Like, I mean, I would at least. The crazy thing is, he had that ID already with a different picture. He knows how to
Wow. He
change
knows
his
how to, yeah.
identity.
Oh wow.
So,
So do they
but
know where he flew to?
they have no idea. So I did
Or
see
if
on
he
like
flew? Maybe he didn't fly.
there's no after that nobody's known except somebody said oh, and here's the other thing, he is very fluent in French
Oh,
because he went on a mission
Canada.
to Paris, and for I think 2 or 3 years in Paris became fluent in Spanish. He also has a business degree in international business.
Wow.
And but in 2006, I believe it was, or 2008, somebody was at a stoplight in Salt Lake City, and it was a guy he went on the mission with. He looks over and it was him. He's like, I swear to God, it was him, because he sped off, like he took off in his fancy car and went off. So even his sister's like, he's hiding in plain sight. He
Oh
has to
wow.
be. And so he's not going to have the same name. He's not going to go by that name. He has many different aliases, but it's not going to be any of the ones that are listed on the websites, right? It's going to be something
Whoa.
different. It's going to be more like personality. And so somebody that you think is Mr. Right, or maybe you've already married him,
Yeah.
do you know his history? Have you met his family?
Right.
Like, could it be him? Like $200,000 could be yours. Like, that's
Wow.
why
And
I'm
there's
like
$200,000
$200,000 for this guy.
reward. Oh wow. Okay, you know what's
And
weird and ironic
yeah,
about this is I just watched Good on Paper. Have you seen that on Netflix?
uh-uh.
Okay, it's so the story you're telling is kind of like Dirty John,
Yeah.
um, that story. And
Yeah.
there's been other people that have tried to do this. The wasn't it a Rockefeller? He said he was a Rockefeller or whatever. And there's been ones that have done Kennedy, and he's a Kennedy or whatever. But Good on Paper is the story of Lisa Schlesinger's
Oh, I saw
lying
that.
ex. Did you see
Is it
that?
the
Did you see
one
that
that she
movie?
thought she was like a royalty or heiress or something?
No, no,
Oh,
no,
it's
no,
not that.
no.
Okay, sorry.
No. Well, that could be that true story, but it's actually a Netflix movie. And it's actually really kind of funny. It's like a rom-com, but it's also kind of sad because, we talk about what us as women do. We ignore the red flags. And he did this exact same thing. He didn't kill somebody for cash or whatever, but it's those things that she started to just like him as a friend, had no interest in him, and that he showed interest in her. And then she's like, well, maybe I should be paying attention to this. The whole time, her best friend is going, he's not who he says he is. Like, this isn't
Yeah,
adding up. These things are not working. A plus B is not equaling C here.
yeah,
And she just keeps ignoring, keeps making excuses. And eventually she does get into a romantic relationship with him, and then is completely surprised when, sure enough, he was lying and cheating the whole entire time.
yeah.
So it's kind of, I mean, not a great movie. It's an okay movie. Like, I'd call it a B, but kind of ironic that I just flipping watched that movie and you're telling like a very
Yeah,
similar story, except that
I
he
just
killed
think he
somebody.
probably changed the way he's looked. His sister did mention that he had talked about plastic surgery. So I think the most obvious thing
Oh
would be
wow.
his nose. Um, and you could probably change your eye color,
Your
with the contacts and
chin.
stuff. And
Yeah.
so you can't even go by looks, but he is 5'10". You can't really change that. So he's not
Right.
super tall.
Right.
But he is going to be somebody like even if you lay low for a while, your personality comes back
Yeah.
out. So
Yeah.
this is a guy who likes the nicer things. He
Yeah.
probably can say the right things about the right.
Yeah.
I would also mention, none of them really liked their father. Like he was the one that would be the troublemaker young, and the father would beat on him, and the
Yeah.
sister would try to get him off, and then she would end up getting hurt. And the father did go missing 10 years before this crime had actually happened. And the sister
What?
believes that he had something to do with it because
Yeah.
she went to the house, and him and his brother were just like getting rid of stuff. Like it was shortly after he had disappeared. And they thought like maybe he had just taken off, but she's like, I really think he had something more
Yeah.
to do with it.
Yeah.
And by the way, I do want to mention his brother is the one that helped him change out the cars from the BMW to the Escalade. And the brother, when the FBI went to him, he lied about it.
Okay.
And um, and so they ended up finding the car in his neighborhood, and he did say, "Yes, I did help him. I cleaned out the car." So he got rid of whatever evidence that would have been straight from
Okay.
the bike to the car. So the
Okay.
brother got 3 years of probation for that. So he did confess, and he actually told his sister, "Tell him everything," even though he was hiding for the car for his brother.
Wow.
So she's
Because
like, I
he
was kind
didn't
of
want her
confused
to
by
get
that.
in trouble.
Apparently not. And I mean, her interview, she's very well spoken. And it sounds like, they had probably a really rough, start with the,
Upbringing.
the
Right.
family and
Where
everything. And
was the mother?
um, they never talk about the mom. Like,
Okay.
at least in the interview, she only talks about like her very ill father
Okay.
and manipulative and just a con man, basically. And same with this Jason guy. He, was like, getting cars with other people's social security numbers because back then things were a little different than they are now,
Yeah.
like technology. And so he was just like scamming on a little scale. So that's the one thing that was really confusing to the FBI because how does somebody just go straight to murder?
Right.
Like if they didn't, they thought they were find somebody who's actually had a history and stuff.
Right.
And it was all this like petty little stuff. And how do you go from that to that?
Yeah.
And I guess out of desperation or um I mean, who knows what makes somebody do that? But he had been bragging to his friends and being like, what would you do? Like asking people their opinions on it. So even though like he
He'd
thought
been
he had
thinking
gotten
about it.
away with it, yeah, he had been thinking about it. And he had got the gun two weeks before, but that, because he wants to be the nice guy, he sends that money
Yeah.
to that kid and the gift
Yeah.
card. Like, but he also thinks he got away with it
Yeah. But
at
had
that time.
no problem just shooting somebody. Like not even giving them a fighting chance, not just saying, give me the bag or I'll shoot you.
Right, exactly.
Like full on
The
just
guy
shoot
didn't
the
even
guy.
have a chance, and not
Yeah.
like he just shot him in the above the head. And I saw the interview with the brother of that guy, and he was like he loved his job. He took it very seriously,
Oh.
like, and he like destroyed a whole family for $55,000.
Well, here's the deal. I have worked in I've never worked in a theater, but I have worked in a movie store. Remember when we used to have
Yeah,
VHS and
yeah.
beta?
Oh, I did too.
Well,
Yeah,
we only had VHS at the store because it was post beta, but you know, we didn't, I mean, we had a good deal of money, but we didn't have that much money
yeah.
where, you know, it would be worth doing
Well, I
something
think
like
one
that.
of the biggest days is for Thanksgiving. Is Thanksgiving? I mean, for
Yeah, that's
going
true.
to the movies
That's
and
true.
stuff. So I think he thought there'd be a ton of cash, but
But
most people, yeah,
yeah, and I'm not surprised there was 50,000, 55,000. I mean, that's probably a good haul on a good weekend.
and that's cash. Like, I
Yeah,
mean, what about
exactly.
credit cards and stuff?
Right.
So like, he ruined a lot of things for $55,000,
Yeah.
and now there's $200,000 for him. Like,
Oh my
I would
God.
say, like, okay, so like now when you're out and about, and you're like,
Yeah.
where are you from? Like, I feel like he's probably saying a little bit of the truth when he answers those questions. But
Yeah.
my question then would be, have you seen them? Do you know
Yeah.
them personally? Have you
Yeah.
talked to them? Like, uh, you know what I mean? I would just question if you're with somebody a little bit more about that because I don't know.
Well, we've definitely seen this in other cases where people just take people's word for it and they don't question
Yeah,
it. And I don't think it's in our nature for most people to be suspicious of people if they tell you something. So I don't even want to tell people like be suspicious of everyone you see, but
right,
if there's red
exactly.
flags, don't ignore
Yeah.
them. That is what I would say.
Well, just like in the very beginning, it's the episode, he's still out there.
Yeah,
When I was talking to Katrina, like sometimes when you're in the relationship, you don't see it.
correct.
But even her just telling me the story, I was like,
Yeah,
really? You didn't think that was weird? That didn't feel weird to you when you just told me that statement? And
yeah.
then to find out that he had just gotten out of prison for strangling his wife.
Right. Right.
Like, all because like it didn't make sense to me, but she felt good about it. I was like,
Yeah.
no, I'm
Yeah.
really sorry to break this to you, but you're dating a murderer.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. A potential
so,
murderer at some point. I mean,
well,
he's
his
willing
first
to
wife did
strangle.
commit suicide. And then his second
Oh,
wife gets strangled.
strangled? Yeah, dude, no.
So,
Ooh. Well, what happened to this kid's mom? That's my question. Did dad kill the mom?
what do you mean? Oh, yeah.
This Jason guy. If mom, nobody
No,
talks about
yeah,
mom.
they never talked about her, so I don't know if something had happened or she left. Oh, and maybe I did hear that she left early. I don't remember exactly the story,
Okay.
but she really just talks about how
Did
sick
she
her father
really
was.
leave?
Yeah, I mean, who knows? But they do
Oh,
believe, she believes that Jason had something to do with the father's disappearance. And she also believes that her brother's hiding in plain sight. Like
wow.
he's just among us. But I mean, he could be anywhere. He speaks
Yeah.
French. Like,
Yeah. I was thinking he went to Canada because, you know, in Canada,
yeah.
parts of Canada speaking French, but
But he threw everybody off. Like he purposely went down there, used his credit
yeah.
card and then he comes all the way back up to Portland. And I don't know. Anyway,
Wow. Yeah. You just got to follow our instincts,
yeah,
follow our
that's my
guts.
story for you today.
Oh, gosh. I want to find him.
Me
Arr.
too. Yeah, it's terrible.
It is terrible. Why do people do bad things? Gosh
I
darn
don't
it.
know.
Well, you know
Yeah.
what, Leslie? That
Yeah.
just means that people need to stay curious, stay suspicious, and stay open.